My parents maxed out my credit card to give their golden child a $20K honeymoon gift trip to Europe, but when I reported it as fraud, and they threw me out for it. I, 28 mem, never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am. My parents just spent $20,000 from my credit card to give my sister and her new husband a trip to Europe as a honeymoon gift, without asking me. And now my card is maxed out. Some background. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings. My sister Kate, 26F, is the middle child, and we have a younger brother Tom, 23M. Growing up in a small Midwest town, it always felt like Kate was the favorite. She was a straight-A student, captain of the cheerleading squad, and generally the perfect daughter. I was more of an average student into video games and computers. Tom was the rebellious one, always getting into trouble. Our parents, especially our mom, always seemed to dote on Kate. This favoritism started early. I remember when we were kids, Kate would get the latest toys and clothes, while Tom and I often got hand-me-downs or cheaper alternatives. There was this one Christmas when I was 10 and Kate was 8. I had been begging for the latest gaming console for months. Come Christmas morning, I was crushed to find I'd gotten a knockoff version, while Kate got a brand new bike and a pile of other gifts. As we got older, the pattern continued. For her 16th birthday, Kate got a brand new car, a shiny red Volkswagen Beetle. When my 16th birthday rolled around a couple of years earlier, I got a beat-up old Ford that barely ran. Tom didn't get a car at all when he turned 16, which was a huge point of contention. Our parents always justified their actions by pointing out Kate's achievements. She was the star of every school play, president of multiple clubs, and eventually valedictorian of her class. Meanwhile, I struggled with math and was more interested in building computers than joining clubs. Tom started acting out in high school, skipping classes and hanging out with a rough crowd. This pattern continued into adulthood. When Kate graduated college with honors, our parents threw her a huge party and gifted her a down payment for a house. They invited what felt like the whole town, rented out a fancy venue, and spared no expense. When I graduated a couple of years earlier with my IT degree, I got a watch and a small family dinner at Applebee's. Tom didn't even attend college, choosing to work in construction instead, which our parents never really accepted. Despite all this, I tried to maintain a good relationship with my family. I moved out after college and got a decent job in IT at a local company. I wasn't making a fortune, but I was comfortable. I even helped my parents out financially a few times when they were short on cash. There was the time Dad's truck broke down and needed expensive repairs, and the summer Mom needed dental work not covered by insurance. I always hoped that by being the good son, I'd eventually earn their approval. Last year, Kate met John. He was new in town, having moved here for a job at the local bank. They were introduced at a church fundraiser and hit it off immediately. They dated for about 6 months before getting engaged. The wedding planning immediately took over everything. My parents were ecstatic, talking about nothing else for months. They insisted on paying for most of the wedding, even though I knew they couldn't really afford it. I remember overhearing a conversation between my parents about the wedding costs. Mom was worried about their savings, but Dad insisted they'd figure it out. "Nothing's too good for our Katie," he said. I offered to chip in, but they brushed me off, saying it wasn't my responsibility. The wedding was last month. It was a lavish affair, way more expensive than necessary in my opinion. They rented out the fanciest venue in our small city, hired a gourmet catering service, and even flew in a band from Nashville for the reception. But Kate was happy, so I kept my mouth shut. I even helped out where I could, running errands and helping with setup. After the wedding, Kate and John were talking about their honeymoon plans. They wanted to go to Europe for a month, visiting multiple countries, but they were worried about the cost. I remember overhearing my mom telling Kate not to worry, that they'd figure something out. I should have known then that something was up, but I didn't think much of it at the time. A couple of weeks ago, my dad asked to borrow my credit card. He said he needed to make a big purchase for work, and his card was acting up. This wasn't entirely unusual. We'd borrowed each other's cards before for various reasons. I trusted him, so I handed it over without much thought. He promised to pay it back quickly. Fast forward to yesterday. I was checking my credit card statement online, something I admittedly don't do as often as I should. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw the balance. There were multiple charges totaling $20,000, all from travel agencies and European hotels. I immediately called my dad. At first, he tried to play dumb. But when I pressed him, he finally admitted what they'd done. He and Mom had used my card to book Kate and John's entire European honeymoon. First-class flights, luxury hotels, guided tours, the works. They said they wanted to give Kate the trip of her dreams, and this was the only way they could afford it. I was furious. I told him this was completely unacceptable. It was my money, my credit, and they had no right to use it without my permission. He got defensive, saying I should be happy to help give my sister such a wonderful gift. He said they'd pay me back eventually, but couldn't give me a timeline. I hung up and immediately called the credit card company to report the charges as fraudulent. They're investigating now, but it looks like the charges will be reversed. I also canceled the card to prevent any further unauthorized use. Then I called Kate. She was shocked when I told her what happened. She swore she had no idea Mom and Dad had used my card for their trip. She offered to cancel the honeymoon, but I told her not to. It wasn't her fault our parents did this. Now my whole family is in an uproar. My parents are furious that I reported the charges as fraud. They're saying I'm selfish and cruel for ruining Kate's honeymoon. They keep bringing up all the times they've helped me, like when they co-signed my first apartment lease or helped me move. They seem to think this entitles them to use my credit card without asking. Kate is caught in the middle, feeling guilty, but also disappointed. She keeps talking about how she's been looking forward to this trip for months, how she and John have already requested time off work. She's not directly blaming me, but I can tell she's upset. Tom is the only one on my side. He called me last night and we talked for hours. He shared some stories I hadn't heard before, about times our parents had borrowed money from him and never paid it back. He said this was just the latest in a long line of financial manipulations. I don't think I did anything wrong here. It was my money, and they had no right to take it without asking. But now, I'm being painted as the bad guy who ruined everything. My mom has been calling non-stop, alternating between crying and yelling. My dad sent a long email detailing all the sacrifices they made for me growing up, as if that justifies stealing $20,000. I'm stressed, confused, and honestly a little scared. This is a lot of money, and I'm worried about what will happen if the credit card company doesn't rule in my favor. Plus, I'm not sure how this will affect my relationship with my family long term. Am I missing something here? Should I have just sucked it up and let them get away with this? I'm at a loss and could use some outside perspective. Update 1. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me stay strong through all of this. The credit card company finished their investigation. As many of you predicted, they ruled in my favor. All the charges have been reversed, and my parents are now on the hook for the $20,000. They're scrambling to figure out how to pay for the honeymoon trip, which is scheduled to start in just a few days. My parents' reaction to this has been intense, to say the least. They've been calling and texting nonstop, alternating between guilt-tripping and outright anger. My mom keeps saying things like, "How could you do this to your own family?" and "We raised you better than this." She's brought up every little thing she's ever done for me, from packing my lunches in elementary school to helping me study for my driver's test. My dad, on the other hand, has been making veiled threats about consequences if I don't fix this mess. He keeps reminding me of all the times he's helped me out, like when my car broke down last year and he spent a whole weekend helping me repair it. He seems to think that because he's done things for me in the past, he's entitled to use my credit card whenever he wants. I've tried to explain my side of things, but they're not listening. They seem to genuinely believe that they had the right to use my credit card because we're family. They keep insisting that I'm overreacting and that I should have been happy to help give Kate this gift. My mom even said, "When you have kids someday, you'll understand the sacrifices parents make." I'm not sure how that justifies credit card fraud, but that's where we are. Speaking of Kate, she and John are caught in an awkward position. They're still planning to go on the trip, but now they're trying to downgrade everything to make it more affordable. Kate called me a few days ago, crying. She said she feels terrible about the whole situation and offered to pay me back herself over time. I told her it wasn't her responsibility and that she shouldn't put her new marriage under that kind of financial strain. During that call, Kate shared some information that shed new light on the situation. Apparently, our parents had promised her this extravagant honeymoon months ago, before she even got engaged. She said they've always talked about taking a big family trip to Europe, but could never afford it. I guess in their minds, this was killing two birds with one stone, fulfilling that old promise and giving Kate a dream honeymoon. My brother Tom has been my rock through all of this. He's been dealing with our parents' favoritism his whole life, so he gets it. He's been running interference, fielding calls from relatives and friends who've been drawn into the drama. Apparently, My parents have been telling everyone who will listen about their ungrateful son who ruined his sister's honeymoon. Tom shared a story from his own experience that really hit home. A few years ago, when he decided not to go to college, our parents cut him off financially. He struggled for a while, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. He asked them for help once when he was facing eviction, and they refused. Yet they had no problem spending $20,000 on Kate's honeymoon. It really put things in perspective for me. The extended family is split. Some are on my side, saying my parents had no right to use my card without permission. Others think I should have just let it go for the sake of family harmony. My grandmother, in particular, is heartbroken about the whole situation. She keeps calling, begging me to forgive my parents and make things right. She's even offered to take out a loan to cover the $20,000 herself, which I absolutely refused. I've been trying to stay firm in my decision, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't wearing on me. The constant barrage of guilt and anger is exhausting. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything and set healthier boundaries. It's been helpful, but it's also bringing up a lot of old issues I thought I'd dealt with. One unexpected development is that this situation has brought some old issues to light. A couple of my cousins have reached out to share similar stories of my parents taking advantage of them financially. Apparently, this isn't the first time they've pulled something like this, just the largest scale. My cousin Sarah told me about how they borrowed her car for months under the guise of helping her save on insurance, while her car was supposedly being repaired. In reality, they were using it as a second vehicle and returned it with much higher mileage. I'm also worried about the long-term effects on my relationship with Kate. While she understands why I did what I did, I can tell she's hurt and disappointed. I'm afraid this might drive a wedge between us that will be hard to overcome. We've always been close despite the favoritism, and the thought of losing that relationship is really tough. As for my parents, I'm at a loss. Part of me wants to try to repair the relationship, but another part feels like this might be the last straw. Years of favoritism and boundary crossing have taken their toll, and I'm not sure if I have it in me to forgive this latest betrayal. I keep thinking back to all the times I felt less than growing up, all the times Kate got preferential treatment, and I wonder if our relationship was ever truly healthy. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm focusing on my own mental health and trying to stay strong in the face of all this family pressure. I know I did the right thing, but it's hard when it feels like I'm losing my family in the process. I'll update again when there are any new developments. Thanks again for all your support. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and things have changed. Not necessarily for the better, but there's been movement. First, the honeymoon situation. Kate and John did end up going to Europe, but on a much more modest scale. They shortened the trip to 2 weeks instead of a month, and stayed in budget hotels rather than luxury resorts. Kate told me they still had a great time, but I could hear the disappointment in her voice. I feel guilty about that, even though I know it's not really my fault. Kate shared some photos from their trip. They visited Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. She talked about climbing the Eiffel Tower, seeing the Colosseum, and walking down Las Ramblas. It sounded like they made the best of the situation, but I couldn't help noticing the contrast between the trip they took and the one that had been planned on my credit card. My parents, on the other hand, have doubled down on their stance. They've gone from angry to cold. About a week after my last update, I received a formal-looking letter in the mail. It was from my parents, stating that they were severing all ties with me due to my betrayal of family trust and values. The letter went on to say that I was no longer welcome in their home, and that they would not be attending any future events in my life, including my wedding, if I ever get married. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I knew things were bad, but I never expected them to go this far. The letter was typed and formal, so unlike my parents' usual communication style. It felt like they were treating me like a stranger, not their son. There was a line that particularly stung. "We have clearly failed as parents if this is how you repay our years of love and sacrifice." I tried calling them, but they've blocked my number. I even drove to their house, but they refused to answer the door. I could see them peeking through the curtains, but they pretended not to. Be home. It was surreal, standing on the porch of the house I grew up in, knowing my parents were inside, but refusing to acknowledge me. The family divide has deepened. Most of my extended family has chosen sides now. My dad's side of the family is mostly supporting my parents, while my mom's side is more split. I've had aunts and uncles I've barely spoken to in years suddenly calling to either berate me or offer support. It's overwhelming, to say the least. My Uncle Jim, my dad's brother, called to tell me how disappointed he was in me. He talked about how family should always come first, and how I should have been honored to help give my sister a nice honeymoon. On the other hand, my Aunt Lisa, my mom's sister, reached out to offer her support. She shared some stories about how my mom has always had a tendency to overstep boundaries and said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Tom is still firmly in my corner. He's been keeping me updated on what's happening with our parents. Apparently, they've been telling everyone that I stole money from them, twisting the story to make themselves look like the victims. They're saying that they asked to borrow my card for a small purchase, and I blew it out of proportion. Tom says they've even started hinting that they might change their will to exclude me. Kate's stance has shifted a bit. After returning from her honeymoon, she seemed to realize the full extent of what our parents did. She called me to apologize again and said she understood why I did what I did. However, she's still in contact with our parents and seems reluctant to fully take my side. I get it. She's in a tough position, but it still hurts. She shared that our parents have been putting a lot of pressure on her and John. They want them to cut contact with me too, saying that Kate needs to choose between her parents and her traitor brother. So far, Kate has resisted, but I can tell it's causing her a lot of stress. Her new marriage is being tested by all this family drama, which makes me feel even more guilty. On a personal level, I'm struggling. The therapist has been helping, but it's hard to process the idea that my parents would cut me off like this. I've had moments of doubt, wondering if I should have just eaten the $20,000 loss to keep the peace. But then I remind myself of all the times they've taken advantage of me and others, and I know I did the right thing. Work has been a challenge. My performance has slipped a bit due to all the stress, and my boss has noticed. I've had to explain the situation to her, which was embarrassing but necessary. Thankfully, she's been understanding and has given me some flexibility to deal with everything. She even shared a story about her own family drama, which made me feel less alone. I've started to think about the future. If this estrangement from my parents is permanent, what does that mean for my life going forward? Holidays, milestones, potential future kids. It's all up in the air now. It's a lot to process. The idea of getting married someday without my parents there, or having kids who don't know their grandparents, is really tough to swallow. One positive development is that I've reconnected with some old friends who I'd drifted away from over the years. When they heard about what happened, they rallied around me, offering support and distractions when I need them. It's been a reminder that family isn't just about blood. My friend Mike, who I've known since high school, has been especially supportive. He's been coming over regularly, bringing food and just keeping me company. As for the money, my parents haven't made any attempt to pay back the $20,000. Tom overheard them talking about possibly taking out a loan to cover it, but nothing's happened yet. At this point, I'm not even sure I want their money. It feels like it would come with strings attached. Plus, the idea of them going into debt over this just adds another layer of guilt, even though I know it's not my fault. I've been thinking a lot about my childhood and how we got to this point. There were always signs of my parents' favoritism and boundary issues, but I always made excuses for them. Like the time they forgot my high school graduation because Kate had a dance recital the same day, or when they used the money I'd saved for a school trip to buy Kate a new laptop for college. I always told myself it was normal family stuff, but now I'm seeing it all in a new light. So that's where things stand now. My family is fractured, my parents have disowned me, and I'm trying to figure out what my life looks like going forward. It's not where I expected to be at 28, but I'm doing my best to stay positive and focus on the people who are standing by me. I'm learning to set boundaries, to value myself, and to recognize that love shouldn't come with conditions. It's a hard lesson, but maybe a necessary one. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm trying to take it one day at a time. I'm not sure if I'll post another update unless something major changes. Thank you all again for your support throughout this crazy situation. It's meant more than you know.